Good morning. This is Faith at Catholic Unschooling Coach. And I'm making this video Sunday morning, and I'll put it up tomorrow morning. So, first of all, I'm up to 60 subscribers, I noticed. And I think it's largely due to Gloria Ballard. So thank you, Gloria. And so I decided to do a giveaway to celebrate 60. And so the thing I'm going to give away, I have several copies of this because I actually wrote a chapter in this book, and it's A Little Way of Homeschooling. It's edited by Suzie Andres. It's 13 Families Discover Catholic Unschooling. I'm one of those. I'm the one and more because I had older kids and we had sort of moved to that collaborative high school way of doing things. So I didn't stay really unschooly all the way through because it just didn't work for us, you know. So anyway, I noticed this is a little dinged up, so I have several copies. I'll give you a better copy. But this is the giveaway. So the first person, sorry about my chickens, but the first person to comment and say that they want this book, I will send it to. So, so there you go. That's my 60 subscriber giveaway. And I was going to talk about the, I think it's the 6th way that I dealt with curricula fever, or that anxiety that makes you want to do school at home and only trust that method as real education, and that makes you want to, you know, constantly be looking for, you know, different curricula, and, you know, you go into this frenzy of buying all this curriculum, you know, all this planning about what all your kids are going to do for every subject and that sort of thing. So, and I noticed that they are falling into a pattern. The first two, getting into books and strewing, or the atmosphere of the home, both largely have to do with acquisitions, or, well, you go to the library and borrow books and that sort of thing. But when you strew, I mean, you could strew things like, you know, I would do like show YouTube videos, or, you know, mention a documentary or something, or suggest going somewhere. But a lot of times it would be, you know, through, you know, getting a new puzzle, or, you know, Christmas or their birthdays, giving them something that would be has some sort of educational value, or even like acquisition in the sense that you're willing to pay for music lessons or art lessons or that sort of thing. So that was the second thing, strewing. And then the next two things, what were they? Oh, they were more about managing time, because one thing that makes, at least for me, made school and home, you know, curriculum-based learning attractive was that it gave me something to do each day, and I felt like I was planning out the day and being constructive in the way my kids spent their time. It was an illusion, but it did give me that sense. And so by really focusing on the liturgical year, not as an add-on, but as a base, and also focusing on figuring out our weekly and daily schedules in terms of outside activities and customs that we developed as a family. Those things helped me feel that we weren't just sitting around being idle all the time. We had purpose to the day. There was, you know, there was some sort of structure or form to each day, depending on the season and that sort of thing. And then the last thing that I mentioned was journaling, which is really, really vital. I think it was absolutely vital, because it really staved off anxiety, and it really helped me feel confident that learning was going on. Then yes, this was working for our family. It was truly, truly working. And the 6th thing that I'm going to say is kind of a spin-off on journaling in a way, and then it's also tied in with strewing. But it was what I dubbed rolling unit studies. So I've talked about how I was influenced by Charlotte Mason in the Living Books because we read aloud. And when you read aloud, it kind of naturally can evolve into a loose unit study because if you're reading aloud about a particular topic that you're learning about, and then you notice something going on, or there's a TV show or a movie that came out that's also on the same topic, or you go to the library and you get more books out, or you find out there's a field trip and it somehow relates, or whatever. It sort of lends itself to that. And I was attracted to a lot of different pedagogies or ways of teaching. And I did like the idea of unit studies. They seemed kind of more relaxed and family friendly. The second year that I homeschooled, I was in this small co-op with just 3 other moms, and we did Konos. Now, again, this is probably an old curriculum. It's Christian. I really liked it. You get this big fat volume. I only had the volume 1. And each unit study is based on a character or a virtue. So I remember we did obedience, and that had to do with horses. You were learning about obedience, the virtue of obedience through studying horses. And horses tie into so many things. History and biology, all kinds of things, geography, where different horses come from, that sort of thing. So it was a really fun unit. And I remember I did it, and at the time, I was just homeschooling. I had homeschooled my oldest son the first year. I kept him out of kindergarten. Then we brought my older daughter home. She had gone through first grade at the local public school. So he was first grade and she was second grade. And then I had a 4-year-old as well, and a baby. Did I have a baby yet? Yeah, I probably had a baby. And so that year I did this small co-op with Konos. I really liked Konos, but the problem with the co-op was that the other moms, and this really made me think about a real problem I think homeschooling moms have. They were so competitive. Now, they were all lovely women. None of them kept homeschooling because I think they just burned themselves out. They couldn't look at the Konos suggestions for the unit studies and just pick and choose. They wanted to do it all. And they had to do it all the way through. It had to be absolutely perfect. They just put so much on themselves. And it was this unhealthy competition that was it just created so much tension. I remember it was just so tense. Whereas I thought, why don't we just relax and enjoy this? So maybe my personality has always been one that just never saw why you should go over the top, and get so uptight about this stuff. It just didn't seem worth it to me. But maybe it's because I'm not, I don't know. I've never been, popular or athletic or anything like that. So maybe it's this, I'm used to not competing because I know most people are going to outdo me anyway. But also my kids this was a blessing. My kids had LDs. They weren't reading. They had issues, right? My son had been diagnosed ADHD, dyslexic. My older daughter had, she's like one of those shadow syndrome kids. She had the same problems, but to a lesser degree. And there was just nothing I could do about it. My kids just were going to be late bloomers. And that sort of made me have to just relax and say, well, let's enjoy what they can do now anyway. And they loved learning. They loved being read to. They loved, they were just in love with life. So just enjoy that. And, the skill sets and the academic stuff will come later. That's what I had to believe, or else I would just go crazy, right? And many times I was overwhelmed with anxiety about the reading issue. But anyway, what was I talking about? Oh, yeah, rolling unit studies. So that was my introduction to unit studies. And so I always kind of had a fondness in my heart for them. And they would naturally occur because, like I've said over and over again, the crux of our homeschool was reading out loud. And so I started, when I was journaling, I would look back over the course of a month or 6 months or a year, and I would see how instead of having this unit study that was crammed into 6 weeks or something, where, every day you were doing everything, united by this one theme, that there would be these unfolding unit studies that would just happen over the course of time. So, for instance, and I give this as an example in other places, but I remember reading The Golden Goblet out loud to my kids. And we loved it. I had never read, what's her name, Eloise Jarvis, or I forget now the author's name. Excellent book, McCraw something. I can't remember. Um, I'd never read her books before. I read it out loud. We really, really loved it. And I think before that, the kids had one of those Jim Weiss CDs, or maybe it was a tape at the time, that had all the gods of Egypt, the story of the different gods of Egypt, which that was educational for me because I was not familiar with them. And then it also had the story of how the King Tut's tomb was found. So it was really interesting tape or whatever it was. And I remember for a while, for months, it was in the car, and it was just what we listened to whenever we got into the car. So we had been exposed to Egypt in that way. And then we read The Golden Goblet. And then I remember getting books out of the library on like Pyramid by David somebody or another. It was beautiful art, black and white drawings. And I think we saw things on TV, like movies. I mean, because we celebrate Passover too, whenever that time would come around, we would watch Prince of Egypt. And that, of course, ties in with it as well, with Moses and everything. And then a little bit later, we did Joseph and his amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, which has a one scene that's a little bit risque, but other than that, it's fine. And then a couple times over the course of my homeschooling career, we mummified apples. There's a website called Newton's Apple, which was like it was a science show that I don't know if it was all over the country, but it was shown by PBS, and it had kids' experiments, neat experiments you could do, and they had one on mummifying apples, and that was a really successful experiment for us. So we just had this, and then we wound up, I remember one time I saw that there was going to be this really neat exhibit on Egyptian mummies. And it wasn't going to be in Washington, D.C. I live outside of Washington, D.C., and we have lots of excellent museums. But this was going to be down in the Virginia state capital, Richmond. So I remember we took a trip, and we went down there, and we saw the exhibit. And this was after months of just sort of in and out of our weeks. The topic of Egypt would just pop up. And we really enjoyed the exhibit. And then I remember we drove around, we ate lunch somewhere, and then we drove around Richmond and we saw the Capitol. So that was a fun time. Anyway, looking back, I could see that a unit study had happened, but it wasn't artificially compressed into 6 weeks where every exercise you did had to revolve around this one theme. Instead, it just sort of unfolded naturally. And instead of me forcing the connection for my kids, they made the connections, right? So they had heard the story, The Golden Goblet or whatever, or they had watched the documentary on the building of the pyramids, all right? And then they connected to the exhibit that they're seeing and that sort of thing. And they connected to what's going on in the Bible story about Moses. So it was much more natural, and it didn't have the pressure. You didn't have to plan. You didn't have to get everything in place all at one time. Like I didn't have to have all the books lined up and, the field trips lined up and all these supplies for the mummifying apples all lined up so that in 6 weeks we'll just go through this thing in this intensive time. No, it just unfolded naturally. And when I got my act together, we went and mummified apples, and it wasn't like too late because the unit study was over and we were on to something else. It tied right back in. So it was a much more natural way of doing things. And when I would journal and look back, I would look for things like that, what I called in my head rolling unit studies. And they happened a lot. They happened really naturally. And so that is another way that I reassured myself that yes, learning was going on, and the kids were making the connections, and there was some sort of cohesion, cohesive interactions going on. So anyway, so number 6 for me were rolling unit studies. All right, I will stop there, and I'll upload this tomorrow, and have a wonderful, blessed Sunday, and I will talk to you later. God bless. Bye.